I woke up on the couch in my neighbor's living room. She said, "You were crying in your sleep last night, but you're safe here." My name is Miles. I'm 25, a freelance graphic designer scraping by in a quiet town just outside Portland. Life's a whirlwind of deadlines, instant ramen, and a breakup that hit me like a freight train. I don't talk about it much. There's not a whole lot to say. She left, telling me I wasn't going anywhere. And ever since, I've been spinning in my own head, wondering if she was right. That morning, I came to on a couch that wasn't mine. My head throbbed like a drum. My mouth tasted like cheap whiskey. And I was still in yesterday's clothes, a wrinkled black t-shirt and jeans that reeked of rain. A thin gray blanket was draped over my legs, one I didn't recognize. The room was small but cozy. Soft yellow light spilled from a corner lamp. Books lined a wooden shelf, and a faint scent of fresh bread hung in the air. Framed photos dotted the wall, too far away to make out, and the rug looked plusher than anything in my place. I patted my pockets, wallet, phone, keys, all there. No sign of theft, nothing worse. But I had no clue where I was. I sat up, heart pounding, trying to piece together the night before. Nothing came, just fragments. A bar, the rain, maybe some shouting. My brain felt like a crashed hard drive. Then I heard a soft hum from another room, followed by the clink of a spoon against a mug. I froze. Someone was there. I stood, wincing at the pounding in my skull, and peered toward the sound. It came from a little kitchen off the living room. A woman stood with her back to me by the counter. She was wrapped in a white towel, her dark hair wet and clinging to her shoulders, like she'd just stepped out of the shower. She was pouring coffee, her movements calm and unhurried. I must have made a noise, a creak in the floorboards, because she spoke without turning. "You were crying in your sleep last night." Her voice was low and steady, like she was stating a simple fact, no questions asked. My stomach twisted, crying in my sleep. In a stranger's house, I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but only a hoarse croak came out. "Who are you?" She turned halfway, just enough for me to catch her profile. High cheekbones. A subtle smile, not mocking, but knowing. She looked about 40, with an ease that made the room feel more intimate. "Nora," she said simply, pouring a second mug. "And you're Miles. Relax, you're not in trouble." She slid the mug toward me across the counter, and her eyes met mine for the first time. They were hazel, sharp, but warm, like she could see right through my fog. I didn't move. What happened? How did I get here? I gestured vaguely at the room, the couch, myself. She leaned back against the counter, mug in hand. "You were a mess last night. I brought you back to my place. That's the short version." She paused, then added, "The long version involves rain, a bar, and you sitting on the sidewalk looking like the end of the world. Want to hear it?" I stared at her, my mind racing. Why had I been crying? And why was this stranger acting like she already knew me? I stood there, gripping the edge of the couch, watching Nora sip her coffee like it was any ordinary morning. My head still spun, not just from the hangover, but from her words. "You were crying in your sleep last night." Me? Crying? Not in public. Not even alone. Not since the breakup tore my world apart. But I didn't have time to argue. She was waiting for an answer, her hazel eyes steady, like she knew I'd want the long version. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. Tell me." She set down her mug, leaned against the counter, and crossed her arms loosely under the towel. "All right," she said, "but sit. You look like you're about to collapse." I sank back onto the couch, the blanket slipping to the floor. My hands were clammy, my throat dry, but I didn't touch the coffee she'd offered. Not yet. I needed to know what happened first. "Last night," she began, her voice calm but measured. "You were at Murphy's bar, that little dive a few blocks from my bakery. It was pouring outside, the kind of rain that soaks you in seconds. I was heading home after closing late when I saw you." She tilted her head slightly, like she was gauging how much I could take. "You were sitting on the sidewalk in front of the bar, drenched to the bone, head in your hands. You didn't look drunk, you looked broken." I swallowed hard. Murphy's bar. Fragments were coming back now. The sticky counter, the burn of whiskey, the bartender's annoyed glare when I'd raised my voice at some guy who bumped into me. My ex, Sophia, had left calling me lazy, stuck in a rut. Last night, I'd gone to the bar to drown it all, to forget how her words had cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I'd had one drink too many, ended up arguing over nothing, a spilled glass, maybe, and the bartender tossed me out. I staggered into the rain, too angry to care, and slumped on the sidewalk, letting the world blur. I don't usually pick up strangers, Nora went on, her tone softening. But I know what it's like to feel like you're falling apart with no one to catch you. I've been there, in my own way. So I pulled over, rolled down the window, and asked if you wanted a ride. She gave a almost shy smile. You didn't say much, just mumbled your name and got in. You smelled like a distillery, but you weren't aggressive, just quiet. I rubbed my temples, flashes were surfacing, rain hammering the windshield, the hum of the engine, a woman's voice asking, "You okay?" I was too out of it to question her. "Why didn't you just drop me at my place?" I asked, my voice scratchy. She raised an eyebrow. "You couldn't tell me where you lived. You kept saying, 'I don't know.' Doesn't matter. I wasn't leaving you on that sidewalk in the downpour, so I brought you here." She gestured to the small living room. "My place. I live alone. There's room. I figured you'd sleep it off and head out in the morning." The way she said it was so matter-of-fact, like hosting a drunk stranger was no big deal. I glanced around again. The bookshelves, the photos, the bread sent probably from her bakery. This wasn't just Good Samaritan stuff. There was something deliberate about her. "You said something last night," she added, her voice lower now. "In the car, before you passed out. You said, 'I'm not enough.' You repeated it like you were trying to convince yourself." My chest tightened. I didn't remember saying it, but it sounded like me, Sophia's words echoing in my head, dragging me down. I looked away, embarrassed, but Nora didn't push. She picked up her coffee, giving me space. "Did I change?" I asked, eyeing my still damp jeans. She shook her head. "No, you refused. Stubborn, even half-conscious. I just covered you with a blanket and let you sleep." She nodded to a pile of folded clothes on a nearby chair, a plain t-shirt and sweatpants. "Those were for you, but you were out cold." I nodded, a mix of gratitude and unease washing over me. This woman, Nora, had seen me at my lowest, crying in my sleep, mumbling my insecurities. And yet, here she was, no judgment, just present. "Why?" I asked finally. "Why help me?" She didn't answer right away. She stepped closer to the couch, handed me the coffee mug, and perched on the armrest a few feet away. "Because I hate watching people crumble where I almost did," she said simply. "And because I could. Sometimes, that's enough." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken layers. I didn't know her story, but I felt it. She wasn't just talking about me. I took the coffee, its warmth grounding me, and realized I wasn't ready to leave. Not until I understood why this stranger had bothered pulling me out of the rain. I sat there on Nora's couch, clutching the coffee mug she'd handed me, its heat seeping into my palms. The pounding in my head was fading, but my mind was still a storm, processing how I'd ended up in this stranger's home. Nora perched on the armrest a few feet away, her towel knotted loosely, damp hair leaving little water spots on her shoulders. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the occasional drip of rain outside. Her earlier words about not liking to see people fall where she almost had lingered between us. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't know where to start. "You don't have to talk," she said, like she could read my thoughts. Her voice was gentle, no pressure, just an open door. "But you look like you're carrying a ton." She stood, went to the kitchen, and came back with a steaming mug of ginger tea. "No more coffee for you. This'll help with the hangover." I took the mug, the sharp ginger scent cutting through my haze. "Thanks," I muttered, awkward. I wasn't used to this. Someone looking out for me with no strings attached. Her place felt like a haven, with its soft rugs, a hint of vanilla probably from her baking, and a stack of recipe books on the coffee table. It was the kind of spot you wanted to linger in, even if you didn't belong. I sipped the tea, wincing at the heat, and looked at her. "Do you do this a lot? Pick up random guys off the street?" I meant it as a joke, but it came out clumsy. She laughed softly, not offended. "No, you're the first in a long time. I run a bakery, not a shelter." Her smile was easy, but there was weight behind it, like she was holding something back. I didn't know what to say next. The breakup with Sophia was still raw, a wound I'd let fester until last night's whiskey ripped it open. "I'm not usually like this," I said, finally, staring into the tea, drunk and falling apart. "It's just." She left, said I wasn't enough, that I was stuck, and maybe she's right. The words spilled out before I could stop them. I braced for some canned advice. "You'll find better," but it didn't come. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, listening. "Sounds like she didn't know you," she said after a pause. People throw words like that when they're running from their own mess. I looked up, surprised. "You don't even know me," she shrugged. "I know what it's like to feel not enough. That's plenty for now." Her honesty threw me off balance. I wanted to ask about her story, why she lived alone, why she'd stopped for me, but I didn't want to pry. Instead, I said, "You run the bakery by yourself? That sounds like a lot." She nodded, pride flickering in her eyes. "Yeah. Up at Ford and need dough, haggling with suppliers who try to short me on flour. But it's mine, keeps me sane." She paused, then added, "Sometimes it's easier alone. Fewer explanations." We talked a bit after that, small stuff at first. My design gigs, how I hated client revisions. Her bakery, how she'd learned baking from her grandma but put her own spin on it. The conversation flowed easy, natural, like we'd known each other longer than a few hours. Before I knew it, the tea was gone, and the room felt warmer. I stood to take the mug to the kitchen, but my legs buckled, and I sat back down. "Sleep," Nora said, rising. "You need it. I'm not kicking you out." I hesitated, then asked, "Why are you doing this? Helping me? You don't know me." She paused at the edge of the living room, her silhouette framed by the kitchen light. "Because I wish someone had done it for me once," she said softly. "And no one came." Her words weren't dramatic, just raw, like she'd peeled back a layer she usually kept hidden. She nodded down the hall. "Guest room if you want, but the couch works too. See you in the morning." I nodded, too exhausted to argue, and lay back down. As I drifted off, her words echoed in my head, and I wondered what pain had driven her to open her door to a stranger like me. I don't know what time I woke up next. The house was dark, wrapped in a silence that felt like the world holding its breath. My mouth was dry, the couch too narrow beneath me, but I wasn't ready to move. The blanket Nora had given me was bunched at my feet, and a faint glow from the kitchen spilled into the living room. I sat up, rubbing my eyes to shake off the sleep and whiskey fog. I was thirsty. I padded barefoot across the plush rug, careful not to make noise. The kitchen was just steps away, and I planned to grab a glass of water before heading back. But when I got there, I saw her. Nora sat at a small wooden table, a mug of tea in front of her, steam curling up in the dim light. She'd slipped into an old, oversized t-shirt after her shower, her hair dry but tousled, falling over one shoulder. An old photo album lay open before her, its pages worn at the edges. She didn't see me at first, her eyes fixed on a picture, her fingers tracing its outline with a tenderness that squeezed my chest. I cleared my throat softly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, her hazel eyes catching the light, and for a split second, she seemed surprised, like she'd forgotten I was there. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. I shook my head. "Just thirsty." I grabbed a glass from the counter, filled it at the sink, and took a sip, leaning against the cabinet. I should have gone back to the couch, but something in her solitary pose, surrounded by memories, held me there. "You okay?" I asked, nodding toward the album. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she closed it gently, her fingers lingering on the cover. "I don't show this to people usually," she said, her voice steady but weighted. "But you're here, and you're not the type to judge." I wasn't sure what she meant, but I pulled out the chair across from her and sat, glass in hand. "I'm listening," I said, not knowing why it felt right. Nora took a deep breath, her eyes drifting to the closed album. "I had a daughter," she said, the words coming slow, like they'd been locked away for years. "Her name was Clara. She was 8 when she died." My stomach nodded. I hadn't expected that, not a loss so vast. "She had leukemia," Nora continued, her voice calm but distant, like she was telling someone else's story. Diagnosed at 5, 3 years of fighting. She was tougher than me. Loved drawing, stories, the smell of bread baking in the oven. I'd make her little cakes just for her, even when she could barely eat. She paused, her fingers tightening on the mug. When she went, everything broke. My marriage, my faith, all the good parts. My husband couldn't handle it. He left a year later, said he couldn't look at me without seeing her. I didn't know what to say. My own hurt the breakup with Sophia. The sting of her words felt small by comparison. "I'm sorry," I said, the words ringing hollow even to me. Nora shook her head, a fleeting smile on her lips. "Don't be. It's not your load." She looked at me then, her eyes searching mine. "I don't tell people this, not because it's a secret, but because it's mine, and most don't know what to do with it. But you're here, and you're a stranger. It's easier to let go with someone who might walk away tomorrow." Her words hit hard, not for their edge, but their truth. I thought of my own mess, Sophia leaving with, "You're not enough," how I'd drown that truth in whiskey. "I get it," I said softly. "Not the same, but I've lost someone too. Not like you, but it still weighs on me, and I don't know how to shake it." Nora nodded, like she understood without details. "You don't shake it," she said. "You just learn to carry it while you walk." We sat in silence after that, the kind that doesn't need filling. I wanted to reach out, touch her hand, say something profound, but I didn't. I just stayed, letting the weight of her story settle between us. "Since Clara," she said after a while, "I've learned to let people in. Not to keep them, but to give them a moment a night, a place to breathe. But I don't expect them to stay." Her voice was sure, but her eyes glistened, catching the kitchen light. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Why tell me?" I asked. She met my gaze, her smile small but real. "Because you're sitting here, and you're not running." I don't know how long we stayed like that. The album closed between us, her tea gone cold. Finally, I stood, legs heavy, and said, "I should let you sleep." She nodded without moving. "You too, Miles. You need it." I went back to the couch, the blanket feeling heavier now, and lay down. Closing my eyes, I could still see her at the table, fingers on the album, and I wondered how someone could carry so much and still open her door to a stranger like me. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, pulling me back to the present. I was still on Nora's couch, the blanket tangled around my legs, the memory of our midnight talk pressing on my chest. My headache had dulled to a low throb, but I felt raw, exposed. Nora's words about her daughter, about learning to carry loss, haunted me. I sat up, rubbing my face, and caught the smell of coffee. She was in the kitchen, no longer in a towel, but in a simple gray sweater and jeans, her hair pulled into a loose ponytail. In the daylight, she looked different, less guarded, like someone you'd pass in the grocery store without guessing her story. She turned, saw me, and slid a mug of coffee across the counter. "Morning again," she said, her voice light but warm, like to an old friend. "You look less like a drowned rat now." I managed to chuckle, taking the mug. "Thanks, I think." I sipped the black coffee, exactly what I needed. The quiet between us wasn't awkward. It felt earned, like we'd crossed some invisible line in the night. I wanted to ask about her daughter, how she kept going, but it was too heavy for morning. Instead, I said, "About last night, you didn't have to tell me all that." Nora leaned against the counter, her smile subtle but genuine. "And you didn't have to listen, but you did." She paused, then added, "I won't grill you on why you cried in your sleep, but if you want to talk, I've got time. Or," she went on, nodding to the kitchen where a tray of fresh loaves cooled on the counter, filling the air with warm, yeasty scent, "you could help me empty the oven. Then you can head out." Her tone was casual, but there was an invitation in it. Not pushy, just open. I stood, stretching my stiff legs, and glanced at the bread. "I don't know the first thing about baking," I said, meeting her eyes, "but I can learn." Her smile widened just enough to show she'd caught my meaning. I followed her to the kitchen, where she handed me an oven mitt and showed me how to pull the trays without burning myself. We worked in an easy rhythm, the clatter of pans and the oven's heat filling the space. She chatted lightly about her favorite bitter coffee, the neighborhood gossip that never quit. It felt seamless, like we'd done this before. Before I left, Nora handed me a paper bag with 2 warm pastries inside. "For the road," she said. I nodded, lingering at the door. Then I felt it. A small slip of paper tucked in the bag. I didn't read it until I was outside, by my bike, under the gray morning sky. In neat handwriting it said, "A stranger landing on someone's couch can be an accident, or a chance. If you want to turn this accident into something, Fridays I make banana bread, doors open." I folded the note, slipped it in my pocket, and smiled to myself. I wasn't ready for promises, and neither was she. But as I pedaled away, the weight from last night felt lighter, like I'd left a piece of it behind and taken something else in its place. In the quiet corners of our souls, where loneliness whispers its heaviest secrets, there's a simple, heartbreaking lesson. Opening up to a stranger can be the balm that heals our deepest wounds. Picture me, Miles, that lost graphic designer wandering rainy alleys of despair, waking on a foreign couch under an unfamiliar blanket, heart still bleeding from a breakup that left me feeling inadequate, unseen. And there was Nora, the baker with hazel eyes carrying the vast emptiness of a daughter gone too soon, offering not just hot coffee, but an ear, a gaze that said, "You're not alone in your fall." Through our late-night exchanges, between ginger tea and the faded pages of a photo album, we wove a fragile thread of shared vulnerability. Nora shared Clara's leukemia, those tiny cakes baked for a fading child, and the deafening silence of a husband fleeing the shadow of loss. I confessed the crush of cruel words, "You're not enough," that drove me to whiskey's embrace. It's no Hollywood romance, but raw truth. Our pains don't vanish. We carry them together. We learn to walk with them, turning a rainy mishap into opportunity, a stranger into a mirror of ourselves. In real life, how often do we lock our doors, fearing the outsider will stir our ghosts? Yet it's in those risky moments that resilience blooms, that fresh bread from a bakery becomes a symbol of rebirth. Let this story brush your soul. Open up, because healing isn't solitary, it's unexpected connection. And you, what stranger shifted your path? Share in the comments your own life lesson, the one that brought tears in sleep or a smile in the rain. Subscribe for more heart-touching stories, tales that remind us in the chaos, there's always a half-open door to hope. Together, let's turn our accidents into adventures.